and welcome to Jefferson County Health Department's Commemoration of a Small Town Resiliency. My name is Lindsay, and I work for the Health Department as a contact tracer for the last 7 months. First of all, I want to say thank you for everyone coming here today, and welcome again. What a year it's been. Do you remember the first time you heard about COVID? How many of us had any idea in January of 2020 what the next 18 months would hold? We have been through at home and masking orders, contact tracing, quarantine, physical distancing, more quarantine, vaccinations, and for some individuals, tragedy, feelings of loss, isolation, anxiety, and depression. At the inception of the ceremony, it was planned as a memorial. However, as the pandemic progressed, we saw a need to acknowledge a few other elements. While we mourn the loss of over 100 people from our community, we also found silver linings as unexpected as the pandemic itself. You will have the opportunity to hear all about that today as we honor those we have lost, but also thank those who have fought us to keep safe. Though our collective loss is great, it too is our strength, our resilience, and our partnership. Jefferson County has long prized its small town feel, but there is more to it than farmland and a lack of skyscrapers. We have grit in our bones, and innovation runs strong in our blood. Our abilities have found new heights, the depth of our knowledge has become vast, and we're more resilient than we've ever been. With spring comes new beginnings. Many of us have found a deeper connection to the nature over the past year, and I am no exception. Recently, I became more aware of cardinals during my nature walks or just sitting in the backyard. Are you aware of the cardinal symbolism? I recently learned that if you're lucky enough to spot a cardinal, you should smile. As according to superstition, if you see one, a loved one who has passed away wants you to know that they're watching over you and you are not alone. Given that so many of us have felt alone or isolated during this COVID-19 pandemic, we hope that you find comfort in this thought also, as we have. Because of this, we have used a cardinal as a symbol of our resilience in this painting you see here. We'll have some time at the end to describe this painting in more detail and give our wonderful artist her due credit. I want to say thank you again all for coming here today, and you will hear from other health department staff, but now please grant your full attention to David Stedman, who will share with us a tribute to his wife who was lost to this disease.
Thank you. Thanksgiving 2020 was about the same as it had been a year before. Normally, we had gotten together with family, but due to a farming accident by my nephew at Halloween in 2019, my wife and I had been forced to spend Thanksgiving by ourselves again. Only this time, the coronavirus pandemic would be the cause, and I had no idea it would be the last holiday I would spend with my dear wife, Cheryl. I work in healthcare, and during the pandemic had been tested for COVID twice a week in as many months. But in November, and on November 22nd of 2020, I got the call that my COVID test taken on November 20th came back positive when the test done just 3 days earlier had been negative. The Jefferson County Health Department performed their contact tracing the day after Thanksgiving and asked if anyone besides myself had been showing any COVID symptoms, and I told them that Cheryl started having symptoms the day before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving Day itself was pretty much normal, but the day after, when talking to the health department, they suggested Cheryl get a COVID test. Because it was a holiday, the nearest place to get the test was at the Alliant Energy Center in Madison. We drove to Madison, and Cheryl received her test and had the results a day later, which came back positive. Over the course of the weekend that followed, Cheryl's symptoms worsened. On December 1st, finally, I had decided that we could no longer try to treat symptoms at home, as Cheryl had become much weaker and the cough was getting worse. So an ambulance was called and Cheryl was transported to the hospital in Fort Atkinson. She was checked over for a time, but was actually sent home as her blood oxygen level was still at a normal range. That night, Cheryl slept in our downstairs couch while I tried sleeping in the recliner. And the next morning when I checked her blood oxygen level with the monitor they sent home with her, it had dropped significantly. While doing our video conference protocol in the afternoon, it was determined that she needed to get back to the hospital for further evaluation. I drove her to the hospital, and little did I know that that would be the last time to see her before having to say my goodbyes at her at UW Hospital in Madison just 2 days before Christmas. You see, Cheryl was a kidney transplant recipient in 2016, which made her a high-risk individual for any type of infections or viruses. And sadly, COVID was the one mountain she couldn't climb of all the battles she had encountered in her life, which were several. She had beat them all before, but the pneumonia that developed in her lungs due to the coronavirus was too much for her this time. Knowing a loved one is struggling with this dreaded disease, when you can't hold their hand or be with them, and all you can rely on is phone communications from the hospital while you hold a constant vigil at home, is the hardest thing I have ever had to do in my life. I'm lucky, however, to have several support networks that helped me through Cheryl's hospitalization and after death. But even though there's all that assistance, there are still times you feel alone, helpless, but are grateful for the people that are there to pick you back up again. Most of us know that there are 7 stages of grief, and one finds themselves waffling through those stages and going back and forth over a wave of different emotions like a roller coaster ride. I'm thankful I've been given many tools and resources by which to go to help me navigate what is still a fairly recent and new normal to have to cope and deal with. There are lots of triggers that cause you to weep when you come to the realization that Cheryl isn't here anymore to share her smile and zest for life. But then there are those moments when the memories of her help you move forward and realize that the memories are what the best to hold on to, and because you can't change the past or bring her back. My thanks particularly to WMTV Channel 15 in Madison and reporter Michelle Bach for doing a story on high-risk patients battling COVID and the follow-up they did on Christmas Eve, the day after she passed. To the Daily Jefferson County Union and reporter Pam Chickering-Wilson, as well as Fort Atkinson Community Theater Board member Amy Lothery for the articles they ran dealing with Cheryl's legacy of giving and her passion for the arts. Cheryl was always about education, and by sharing her story, it has always been my hope that in some small way, a life could be saved or someone could be encouraged to get involved in their community and make a difference. I'd like to thank the members of the Lions Club's international family, and particularly the Jefferson Lions Club, for their honoring of Cheryl's memory by planting a tree at Crawfish River Park just over here in her memory, as well as the numerous tributes that have been coming in from Lions members around the world. Also, Cindy Herbst, Executive Director of the Restoring Hope Transplant House in Middleton, and my pastor, Reverend Chris Buckingham Taylor, Cheryl's siblings, Susan Erickson and Stephen Daniels, and the UW Hospital staff that were with me either in person or virtually during Cheryl's final moments. Also like to thank my church family and friends and relatives for your love and support and nurturing through meals and tokens of love and caring, as well as monetary contributions to Cheryl's many organizations she was involved with. Special note to also Dawn Lyons Wood for her sponsorship in a book entitled Because of Organ Donation, which is so much a part of Cheryl's life, and for her work with UW Health Organ Tissue Donation and Donate Life America. And also to the Jefferson County Health Department for allowing me to speak today and to share Cheryl's COVID journey. And pray that we never have to experience another pandemic where over 600,000 lives and counting were lost ever again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, for sharing Cheryl's story with us. We appreciate your vulnerability in this space. My name is Ellen Haynes. I have had a 52-year career in healthcare, all in Jefferson County. So I've done a wide variety of different things in healthcare. But this last year, I have worked with this fabulous COVID group at Jefferson County Public Health, and have really learned and tried to provide support to the long-term care community in Jefferson County. We would like to, at this point, have a moment of silence to remember Cheryl and all the other individuals who lost their lives to COVID in this last year, and also anyone who is lost. So please join me. Thank you. We'll now hear from Keely and Sangos.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here.
Gracias a todos por estar aquí con nosotros.
My name is Samrose Chakvani. I'm the epidemiologist and COVID-19 Public Information Officer for Jefferson County Health Department.
My name is Keely Johnson Crosby. I am a public health nurse with the Jefferson County Health Department, primarily working with our COVID team.
So Keely and I are here today to thank, honor, and recognize the people of our community, those who have fallen to COVID-19, those who fought tirelessly day after day to save lives and protect us, and all the others who have been affected by the pandemic, which has defined so much of the last year and a half. Over the course of the pandemic, our country has lost over 596,000 individuals. That's 596,000. That's an incredible number of people when you think about it. That's over 500,000 people who have lost their lives to COVID-19. 113 of those deaths, which is also a significant number. 113 individuals from our county have passed away from COVID-19. Many others became severely ill, and some continue to experience the effects of the virus months after being infected. Some of us who are here with us right now are still struggling with the impact of the pandemic. We may have lost loved ones, elderly family members and friends, frontline healthcare workers, or others we're connected to in some way. I myself know of a few people, and I'm sure that there's people here who have lost their loved ones or friends as well.
For the past several months, we've been moving in a positive direction, which is a stark contrast from the start of this year, which, as we all experienced, was the peak of of COVID cases, of loss, of really the worst of the pandemic for us. With nearly half of county residents having received the vaccine, and our case rates are lower than they have been in over a year, we're now at the opposite end of the pandemic. Fingers crossed. In December of last year, the COVID-19 vaccines were approved and shots started going in arms. We still have a large number of new cases confirmed every day, especially compared to any other communicable disease in our county. But we're nearing what would become the tip of our downward slope now.
So at that time at the health department, we naturally began focusing on vaccine clinics, eligibility, and all that came with that. Everything else that came with pulling together an effort to vaccinate thousands of individuals over a short period of time. It took something remarkable from the staff that you see here today to roll with the punches and constantly change direction. I'll share a quote from a community organizer that I follow, Valerie Tullier-Laiwa, who said, "We don't panic, we pivot. We are just continually reacting and responding." That sentiment resonates so deeply when I think of public health over this past year and a half, having to constantly pivot, assess the new evidence that we had, look at our data and make our decisions and pivot accordingly.
Along with the remorseful elements of loss that we've talked about, we're also here to appreciate our unity, our wonderful, resilient community of Jefferson County, and all of our communities that thrive within. Over the past year, we've seen so much change on an individual level, within our communities, and across the county, the state, and the country. Along with our physical health, our mental, social, and economic wellness have been impacted by the pandemic as well.
People in our community had different experiences during the pandemic depending on their circumstances, their occupations, their backgrounds, but many of us were isolated at home for long periods of time, hesitant to go to the grocery store or even when we thought it was a risk to go get the mail. Some of us couldn't stay home and went to our jobs caring for others, growing their food and teaching their children, even when the world outside our homes was frightening and a little uncertain. While some sick people isolated themselves to a single room for 10 days, we know others slept in the garage or pitched a tent outside in all kinds of weather to keep their loved ones safe. Many families were quarantined within their homes for weeks and months on end in an endless cycle of exposures and quarantine, particularly for kids who were in school. It was, they'd go to school, they'd get exposed, they'd go home and quarantine for a while, and then the cycle would continue to repeat.
So many of us weren't connected with our beloved family members and friends like we're used to. I think we can all talk about how our holidays look different over the last year, how the people that we're closest with, who are most vulnerable, were the people that we were most distanced from. I worked closely with Ellen for a time with our long-term care facilities, and the impact of the pandemic, especially on that population, is undeniable. We spoke with families whose loved ones are hospitalized, and we mourned with them when all they could do was video chat to tell their loved one how loved they truly were, not knowing whether they'd be able to hug them again.
The isolation and loneliness that was felt by people, especially the elderly, was so shockingly real. So many individuals lost their jobs or experienced a significant decrease in their livelihood or had to take on about as much as they could handle. That impact is still being felt. Our local businesses have struggled and persevered and struggled and persevered some more to stay afloat in these times.
That's the story that we also want to honor today, that of small town resilience and grit, that which we saw in some of the stories we are honored to share with you today, including so the woman who, when we called to offer her the vaccine, negotiated to get appointments for her entire work family. I think we had close to a dozen people come in because of that one call. The nursing home workers who pulled double shifts to cover for their sick colleagues. It's hard to compare hardships, but a special acknowledgement needs to be made for the burden that children and other students have dealt with the past year, from the lack of normal socializing, graduating Zoom University. They have shown us what they are capable of.
some of the other stories. The family who hosted a drive-through birthday party to give some semblance of normalcy to the best part of being a kid. The family who lost someone special, a mom, a wife, a daughter, a healthcare worker, who shared their anguish with us, who were vulnerable with us and vowed to honor her memory and sacrifice. The business owner who changed the way that they did business, making curbside options available and making their storefront as safe as possible for the public. Along with acknowledging what students went through, we can't go without acknowledging the school staff who learn new ways to teach our children. You have an impossibly difficult and vital job on any given day, and this past year tested the strength of our school systems as much as it did our healthcare systems.
In public health, we talk a lot about ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. This is a way to look at, the life that we lived as children and how it impacts our well-being as we grow older. Too much adversity is clearly detrimental, but we also know that adversity breeds resilience, and it's clear that we are a resilient community, able to overcome the challenges we face, and to collectively take our lessons learned forward for mutual benefit. What we want to take away from this pandemic is an affirmation of our unity, our solidarity with one another, and an acknowledgement of our shared vulnerability in the face of a pandemic and other collective threats. Though many of us are relatively healthy, we're at low risk of severe illness from COVID. We practice public health recommendations to stop the spread of COVID and ease the overall burden of the pandemic on our loved ones and on our community.
We stayed at home when case rates were high. We quarantined upon exposure. We wore our masks most of the time. We did not do those things just for ourselves. It was to protect all of us, right? A collective us, which especially includes our most vulnerable community members or our family members. What we sacrificed for others and what we experienced has made us a more resilient community. Thank you to everyone.
Gracias a todos.
All of you here and everyone who is not.
Los que están aquí y todos que no están con nosotros.
A special thanks from the Health Department staff for our leadership of the Health Department and of the County Board.
Gracias especialmente por el parte del Departamento de Salud, a nuestro liderazgo y la Junta del Condado de Jefferson.
But a most special thanks to our community members, those who have supported us, those who engaged with us in constructive dialogue, those who wore their masks and distanced from others and stayed at home when they were ill, and all those others who fostered their resilience this year.
Un agradecimiento excepcional a los miembros de nuestra comunidad, los que nos han apoyado, los que se han involucrado en diálogo constructivo, los que llevaron la mascarilla, mantuvieron el distanciamiento y se quedaron en casa cuando estaban enfermos, y todos que fomentaron su resiliencia.
Please enjoy your summer and continue to pay attention to our communication channels for the best and most up-to-date guidance to keep yourselves and the community safe.
Que disfruten el verano y sigan el monitoreo de nuestros canales de comunicación para lo mejor y más actualizado de recomendaciones para mantener seguros ustedes y a su comunidad.
Hello, everybody. Most of you know me, but for those who don't, I'm Gail Scott. I'm the health officer for Jefferson County and the director of the health department, and I have had the great honor and privilege of working with just a fabulous group of people this last year and a half, and hope to continue to work with them, but hopefully not on COVID, or less on COVID. This past year has been one of the most trying times for most public health staff and many of you who work in healthcare. We have seen a record exodus of public health professionals, and many healthcare workers are feeling depleted. There is valid reason for it. Over the past year and a half, we have come together to achieve what would seem absolutely impossible. We have had countless virtual meetings. You gotta love Zoom, right? Not. Spent long hours awake at night working and thinking about our work and our community, and did the hard work to achieve our objectives. Even when information was scarce and changing every 5 minutes on this new or novel virus where everyone in the world was susceptible to this little tiny virus. Just think about that. Everyone in the world was somebody who could get sick from this virus. No one had immunity. But we found answers, and we were able to forge ahead. Whether it was through the Emergency Operations Center that was skillfully run by our County Administrator, Ben Waymeyer, the Testing and Vaccine Task Force, or through a different collaboration, or whether you were working on COVID-19 related items outside of those venues, you were our partner. Our partners were one of the most valuable resources in our response. Just as testing, vaccination, and educational resources were the assets that helped us to achieve our goals, so were our partners and the resulting collective impact. Simply put, without the help, support, and engagement of our partners, our response to the pandemic would have been incomplete and far less successful than it was. So thank you. Thank you for being with us in this effort. Thank you for helping inspire us. Thank you for helping to keep us going strong in the face of adversity, high case rates, and mass information. Thank you for being available for very early morning calls, and yes, those last minute favors, like, can we get somebody in tonight to get a COVID test? Or somebody just to listen to us. Thank you for helping our community. We know that without true partnerships and collaboration, our work is less impactful. Working with you over this past year and a half has helped us to demonstrate that beyond a doubt. While I cannot list all the partners who have served us throughout the pandemic, and they will be listed in our annual report, there are some who I would like to thank by name today. My dear friend, David Stedman. David and I grew up together, although he's younger than I am, by just a little bit, right, David? And for sharing his story about his beautiful and talented wife, Cheryl, who I affectionately call Cher. Robin Chamberlain Sweeney, the artist who created our commemorative painting, and the Horde Museum, who will be hosting the painting in an exhibit. And the sponsors who helped us make this event possible, Blodgett Garden Center for some birdseed. Where better to get birdseed than Blodgett Garden Center? Chilson Hardwood Flooring, and Walmart. Now please, when I'm done, we will give you a round of applause and take a moment to recognize what you have put forth. We are proud of our collective work and the impact of it, and look forward to many more years working together. Thank you. And now we will hear from the workhorse of the health department, the one who kept us all together, who was there even if she was in the hospital. Sorry, I had to add that one. I hope that's okay. I never did email and text somebody who was in the emergency room quite as much as Elizabeth. but she has such wonderful dedication to our health department, and she barely had a year under her belt when COVID hit, correct? So we barely had gotten through, you know, the first page of orientation, and we were onward to COVID. She has held our team together, and she has been the driving force behind our clinics, our contact tracers, our disease management. So please give a warm welcome to Elizabeth Chilson, our Public Health Program Manager.
Good morning, everyone. As Gail introduced me already, my name is Elizabeth, and I'm the Public Health Program Manager for the Jefferson County Health Department, and I have been the Incident Commander for our vaccination clinics. I started working with Jefferson County in June of 2019, and in December is when all of our lives kind of started turning into COVID. When I think about this past year and a half, so many emotions start pouring in. I've spent the duration of my career in public health, and as a public health leader and a supervisor, we know that there is several hours of emergency preparedness training that we are all required to undergo. And with that, as you can see, never had to be told to speak louder before. We are required to complete those emergency preparedness trainings. These countless hours spent on training and preparing for these types of events made me feel really confident in what to do and why I would do it. The truth is, however, I thought I understood what and why, but there was nothing that could have prepared me for the who or the how of this pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, our tiny but mighty health department protected the health of the county by providing a wide range of services, ranging from immunizations to home visiting or even preventing alcohol and tobacco use in children. Upon the notice of our first positive case in the United States, our job quickly shifted and these important services were completely halted. We had to conceptualize a new way to protect our county, and we had to come to terms with the realization that we could not do it alone. This is the who of the pandemic that we were not prepared for. There is no amount of training that could tell you just how many staff are needed to contact trace a novel virus that we were still learning about. There is no amount of training that could tell you just how many people are needed to vaccinate an entire population. Our small team quickly multiplied, and we continued to work together. This type of work truly isn't for everyone, and as stress and cases rose, so did this awareness. But for the who of this pandemic, this work is for them. For the people who jumped in, ready to help the cause, some having never even stepped foot in Jefferson County, we thank you. You jumped in a time of uncertainty and fear, and you jumped in when we needed you the most, and for that we are forever grateful. Throughout this pandemic, long and stressful hours became our new norm. Despite the demanding days, our team continued to give their all, oftentimes feeling like a cog in a machine that was designed to chase a problem we were neither helping prevent nor solve. As the days continued, we could barely keep up. The darkness seemed to completely consume us, and the term burnout became very real for us. This is the how of the pandemic that no one could have ever prepared us for. How gut-wrenching it is seeing your colleagues burn out while the days turn into months and months into what felt like an eternity. How difficult it is having something completely consume your entire department and see your staff morale decrease exponentially. How scary it is seeing a mass exodus of health workers, knowing that there will be detrimental downstream effects. Nothing, and I mean nothing, can prepare you for that. But there is more. Somehow, we find strength as a team to make it through. You find ways to remind each other the importance of what we are doing and our ability to persevere and come together to help the greater cause, our community. To our entire team and to those of you who volunteered their time or came out of retirement to help us, I want to thank you. You may not have been an official part of our team, but I have never in my life met a more dedicated group of individuals, and I have never in my life been more proud to be a part of anything as I am this team. As we are now coming to a point where we are going to go our separate ways and embark on a new adventure, I really hope you remember your time with Jefferson County Health Department and the hardships that we endured together. But I also want you to remember all of your accomplishments. I hope that you remember your resiliency and the fact that you truly can accomplish anything that you put your mind to. Together we have navigated through this COVID storm, and things are starting to look brighter, but please know that we could not have done it without any of you. I'd like everyone to please give a round of applause to everybody in the Jefferson County Health Department. this time I'm going to have Jean and Simone, two of our contact tracers, come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So we want to wrap up by spending a few minutes talking about this wonderful work of art. Thank you to Robin Chamberlain-Sweeney, the artist who generously donated her time, talent, and art supplies to create this painting for Jefferson County. Although her intent was to be here to present this beautiful painting herself, Robin was unable to make it today. It is our pleasure to present her artwork and the profound meaning behind it.
This painting is titled Abundance, Hope, and Future. When she was asked to create a piece of art that represents our community's resilience, this was Robin's description. Here is an Earth Mother holding rebirth in her arms or hands. The circles or orbs represent those who have passed but are still with us. The Earth Mother's dress becomes a boat. The eagle signifies inspiration, release from bondage, and victory. Her prayers travel to heaven on the back of the eagle. The eagle also represents wisdom, freedom, courage, hope, resilience, healing, and vision. The fish in the fields represent abundance. The wind blowing her hair and dress represents moving forward, a continuum. The large orb in the upper left corner is no longer white because it's moving on. The green orbs are associated with the heart and nature. The fish also represents the unconscious higher self. Water brings life to the creatures living below. It symbolizes fertility, birth, and rebirth. The cardinals represent devotion and loving relationships. This painting will be at the Horde Museum in Fort Atkinson today through July 2nd. Afterwards, it will be located in the Jefferson County Health Department's lobby. The community is welcome and encouraged to visit the painting. On behalf of the Jefferson County Health Department, we would like to thank you all for coming, sharing this occasion with us, to honor our fallen community members, to thank those who have protected others, and to recognize our resilience and our capacity to thrive. Before you leave, please take a few bags of birdseed with you to help you attract cardinals to your yard. Thank you again to David Stedman for sharing his tribute. Thank you to our community members. Thank you to all of our partners, our staff, our sponsors, and to our artist, Robin Chamberlain-Sweeney. Thank you all for coming.
Hi, I'll just be very brief. This is Bob Salov. I'm the Chief Director of the Cambridge Area EMS. We shoulder into Oakland, Jefferson County. 50% of our district is here. So that's why I'm here, and thank you to the county and to Ben and to the health department for including me on these virtual meetings, because it's informed me a lot, and that's why I'm here today. So I just want you for a moment to think about the first responders, the law enforcement, the firefighters, and the EMTs and paramedics who go out. We did a tremendous amount of preparation at a huge cost, with PAPRs, masks, gowns. We did everything. We had no exposures, and we confronted COVID patients, on many calls. So, or COVID-like symptoms, which we had to totally prepare for. Disinfect the ambulances every call. So it was a huge effort on our part also, and a wonderful effort on the Department of Health. Thank you all so much, and for listening to me impromptu.
All right, so that's it for today. Again, like I mentioned, please feel free to grab a bag or two of birdseed and spread them wherever you are to attract more cardinals. Thank you all again. And if we've only talked online and I've never actually met you in person, please come say hi. Take care.
I want Dave, and I want as many of your speakers as I can sit.
Oops, sorry.
Here,
I'll only be a minute.
Get out of your way. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so
Far
if I
side.
could get you all, I